Dying to Be Stuckmocky is a young adult fantasy novel released chapter by chapter on YouTube in audiobook form. So here we go. Chapter 1. The Black Hole. The warrior princess swung the bulging merchandise bag onto her bracer-encrusted forearm and selected a figurine from the counter. How much for the Mirrin fearless fighter figurine? The stall owner wiped a speck of mayonnaise deeper into his Black Hole Comic-Con t-shirt, then eyed the princess with some interest. $168. Ouch! Vira winced, hurriedly replacing the small figure. She looked over her shoulder at the short, thin man standing uncertainly against a nearby pillar. Her father looked uncomfortable in most environments that weren't academic, but he looked particularly unsure of himself, surrounded by people with half their minds so obviously in another universe. She knew he would much prefer to be alone in his study, finishing his latest article for publication in one of the many mathematical journals he held in such high regard. Not for the first time, she wondered how on earth her widowed father had managed the noisy, distracting business of caring for her as a baby and child until he married her stepmother when Vira was 8. She briefly considered begging her father to buy her the figurine, but Vira didn't have the heart to impose on him even more than she already had by dragging him to this alien environment. She stopped trying to catch his eye and turned back to the stall owner. How about the Mirrin coffee mug? $35, droned the stall owner, his interest rapidly fading. Phew! The Mirrin keyring? The stall owner stared at Vira a moment and sized up her financial resources. He then reached to the very edge of his counter and selected a modest souvenir. The stubby holder is $10. I'm 15, I don't drink. The stall owner smirked ever so slightly with disbelief, then pointed at the stubby holder. It has a picture of Mirrin on it. You've convinced me. Vira fumbled in her bag for her change purse, extracted the last of her money and handed it over. She stared glumly into the depths of her purse. I know why this convention is called Black Hole now. Vira took the stubby holder from the stall owner and held it up for a doubtful inspection. I guess I can always put my console in this. She pulled a game console from her bag and dropped it into the holder. It wasn't the best of fits, but she placed it on the counter while she returned her purse to her bag. The stubby holder sagged awkwardly sideways from the weight of the console. That's the spirit, said the stall owner, mustering some sarcastic charm. Enjoy your neoprene console holder with non-slip rubber base. As the words left his mouth, the console suddenly sagged further sideways, hit the counter and slid off. It dragged the stubby holder with it while making a loud beeping noise. Hey, so much for the non-slip base, cried Vira, as she dived to recover the console and holder, which had both fallen into an enormous bin labelled Mirrin Fearless Fighter Swords. As soon as her arm plunged into the bin, she felt overcome with dizziness, and her vision contracted to 2 small tunnels. Leaning over as she was, she found it impossible to keep her balance, especially as there seemed to be some kind of sucking sensation spreading up her arm and engulfing her whole body. What the? Vira toppled head first into the bin and landed in the bottom with a thump and a mighty clatter of swords. Oh gosh, so sorry. I didn't mean... she spluttered as she managed to awkwardly stand up. Her words trailed away as her vision cleared and she looked around her. Vira was part of a crowd of spectators in the stands of what appeared to be an ancient arena, and she was surrounded by cheering people, wearing clothes straight out of a gladiator movie. A loud beeping noise broke through her confusion, and she looked down to discover she was standing in a large wooden barrel, the bottom of which was covered in something decidedly unpleasant and smelly. She crouched down and gingerly reached around a slimy object that might once have been a fish, to rescue her complaining console. As she stood up again, she noticed her other hand was tightly gripping the stubby holder. But I don't drink, she muttered, not sure which implication of that statement was the most important in the moment. Vera clambered out of the stinking barrel and did her best to wipe her console clean on her costume skirt. By pressing every button in sight, she managed to bring the beeping to a halt. However, it then began to blast a fanfare from its little speaker and talk in a voice she'd never heard before. "You are Mirrin, fearless fighter, entering the arena. What is your first move?" "What? Sorry, what?" "The Stuckmocky approaches and prepares to strike. How do you respond, Mirrin?" demanded the console. Vera looked around desperately for a glimpse of something that made sense, but all she saw was that down in the arena, a large, furry, bipedal creature, clutching a sword, was slowly approaching a muscled young man, who appeared to be her hero Mirrin. Vera looked down at the console again, and now saw the same scene on its screen. She tilted her head up and down between screen and arena several times, trying to understand what was happening, while the crowd around her began to boo with impatience. "How do you respond, Mirrin?" repeated the voice. Vera tentatively pressed a couple of console buttons, and saw the Mirrin on the screen and in the arena raise his sword and move towards the shaggy beast. The crowd around her cheered enthusiastically. Vera began to press more buttons, rapidly getting faster as she found her usual rhythm. "This is awesome! Talk about virtual reality! The Stuckmocky doesn't stand a chance against me as Mirrin. Ha!" "Mirrin fearless fighter medallions! Get your Mirrin medallions here!" cried a familiar voice at her elbow. Vera looked up and recognised the stall owner from the Comic-Con, now, however, wearing an open furry vest over his bare, also furry chest. Around his neck was slung a wooden tray covered in metal medallions. "You! What happened? How did I get here?" Vera demanded, looking down at the medallions. "And why weren't you selling these a minute ago? They're adorable." "I have been selling these all afternoon," he replied with slight offence. "I also have magnificent Stuckmocky pelts," he advertised, as he gestured at his attire. "They make wonderful vests if you're handy with a needle and thread." The stall owner's eye fell on Vera's faux leather armour, and he started slightly. "Oh, sorry, young man. If your mother is handy with a needle and thread, you could use a bit of fur to make you look more manly, until your own fur comes in. Ha ha!" he said, as he slapped his chest heartily. "Fur?" said Vera, with dawning concern. "That's an actual Stuckmocky you're wearing?" "Yes, a very reasonably priced souvenir of Mirren's triumphant and bloody match last week." "Oh no, I can't be responsible for that!" cried Vera, as she turned back to her console with determination. While the two had been talking, the crowd had begun to boo again at the lack of action in the arena. Vera's return to button pushing only increased the volume of disapproval. The stall owner glanced down to see the reason for the complaints. "What the? Coward! Coward! Boo! Fight the Stuckmocky! Boo!" With a sudden change of expression, he turned to the crowd around him and cheerfully called, "Mirrin fearless fighter medallions, now half price. Get your bargain price medallions." Vera ignored him and concentrated on her console. "Now run, Mirrin, get out of there. If the Stuckmocky doesn't kill you, the crowd will." "But how do I save the Stuckmocky?"